So the text I sent out, some of you got it, some of you didn't. I sent out a text this morning, just said identify, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Is what do we identify with? And you know how be talking to somebody and be having this conversation, and they'll say something and you'll say something, and one of you says, "Well, I can identify with that," right? And this is very instructive, because what's happening, of course, is that we're making a connection when that occurs. We're making a connection with that other person. Sometimes it's not a positive connection, because what we're identifying with is a negative judgment that they perhaps shared with us, or we shared with them. But this thing about identification, there's these two big questions that haunt us our entire life. And the questions are, who am I? And why am I here? And these two questions are really all tied up in how we identify. And it seems, I've been here for a little while now, and it seems like my experience is showing me pretty clearly that when I identify with the body and with the material world, I seem to suffer more. And when I identify with spirit and the things of the spirit, I find joy. And that's not to say that by identifying with spirit that I don't get to enjoy the things of the material world. It's really quite the contrary. That when I identify with spirit, whatever comes to me through the material world is much easier to enjoy. When I'm identifying with the body and with the material world, the things that come to me from the material world are either problematic or they're not enough. There's always that sense of it's not quite what I expected, it's not quite what I wanted. Or it could be, of course, much worse than that. But so this identification thing, we have this identity, and the problem is when we're identifying with the body in the material world, we are actually caught up in that split personality that Freud identified in us, that we have this one piece of us which is always wanting everything that it wants, and it wants it right now. And Freud actually called it the it. We've changed the name to the id, but he called it the it. And it's this thing that is always after pleasure and always trying to avoid pain. And then we have what was identified as the ego, or the I, he called it, the ego that is trying to control the id. Because this other piece of us, the third piece of us, which is called the superego, which is all of the race memory, all of the things we think we need to feel guilty about, all of those things are telling that middle part of us that we need to feel guilty about what, when we gave in to the it part of us, and or all sorts of other things, all sorts of reasons that the superego has for us to feel guilty about. So we have this war. When we're caught up in identification with the body in the material world, we're at war with ourselves. We are split within ourselves. And when we turn that identification around and we identify with spirit, that's when we heal that fracture that exists within us. So if we're at war with ourselves all the time, it isn't any wonder that we find ourselves in conflict with the people in our lives. And this conflict then turns into other areas of identification. We identify ourselves with the body, so then we identify ourselves with the world. And when we identify ourselves with the world, with what's happening out there, we have to form alliances in this material world, because it's dangerous, because it's a place where, it seems like we have to be on guard all the time. So we identify then with the family. And when I say we identify with the family, I'm not saying it in a positive way. We're identifying with the family as we're close knit with the family because we're going to take care of each other. As this little unit is going to, and of course that family unit then grows into the tribal identity, which now we don't so much. We think we don't have a tribal identity, but we do. We identify ourselves with our close group of friends. That's our little tribe, or perhaps our neighborhood. perhaps the school that we went to, or our workplace. We identify ourselves with our profession, and then maybe perhaps with that fraternity of that profession, and that this is who we are. And or then we identify ourselves, and when we really are scared, we identify ourselves with a political party. We're like this, or we're like that, or no, I'm not either one of those, I'm this independent person. But that actually has become an identity too. And all of these identifications are linked to our fear that comes from us thinking that we are separate from Spirit, which is actually our true identity. So, and then of course when we're in a political party, no matter which political party we're with, most people identify themselves with a country. And all of these things, all of these separate identifications cause more conflict in us, and then of course it manifests itself into the outer world. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having some sense of fondness for the school we went to. There's nothing wrong with having a group of friends, but the problem is when we start thinking of them in terms of being exclusive rather than thinking about it being inclusive. Yes, I know everybody can't go to the same school. It can't happen that way. But if everybody who goes to the same school has the idea that the whole thing hinges on being able to be of service to the greater whole, rather than just whatever the issues that you might hold personally to be important. So all of these things, all these identifications, cause conflict. Some of them cause big conflicts. Some of them cause just small conflicts. But then I read somewhere that even this mild irritation that we sometimes feel is really just kind of an illusion that lies over the top of this deep reservoir of rage that exists beneath. And we know, and we may even want to argue about it and say, well, I never really get crazy angry, but if we think about it, if we really consider, there are some things that really get us going. And that again is just being revealed to us that this upset really does exist in us. And what I want to say this morning is that it all comes from this misidentification. So if we want to be free of it, it's just a matter of us changing our identification. But unfortunately, it's not just as simple as saying, okay, I'm not going to be that way anymore. Today I'm going to turn over a new leaf. That could be a beginning. The beginning can be, I want to be different. I want to identify differently than what I have before. And I can start to consider these ideas. Unfortunately, at least my experience is that these identifications just don't totally go away just because I decided that they would. Because when pressure is applied, they come back. So, but there's some things that we can do, that we can start doing. We can start telling ourselves different things about our identification. If I identify with Spirit, I can tell myself that my true identity, who I really am, is I am a child of God. And this is a good starting point for true humility too, because humility is it's of course the opposite of vanity. Vanity being this state of mind where we alternately believe that we are more than or less than someone else. And there's no one in the world who all the time thinks that they're more than or better than everybody else. There's no one in the world that always is thinking that they're less than everyone else. It is it's that flip-flopping back and forth. I think I'm less than, and so I try to act like I am more than. I look for examples in other people where they're worse than me in this area or that area, but then of course I observe that other people are better than me in this area or that area. All this is very uncomfortable. So I'm continually flipping back and forth. So this is vanity. Humility is knowing who we are and not having to act like something else. So, and here's our basis, the foundation for humility is to know that we are a child of God, because then we go, yeah, you know what? You really can't get any better than that. So we don't have to act like anything else. That's it. That's who we are. But then we recognize as soon as we say that we're not alone in that. So, now, some may argue that some of our brothers and sisters out there are not, but they are. The reality of it is we all are children of God. And that sets us all on that level playing field. And it takes away all of those judgments when I can put my attention on it. When I put my attention on it, it takes away all the judgments of this one's less than, this one's more than. And then to realize that as children of God, that, now this may come a little bit down the road, but that part of our identity is our shared purpose, that we have a shared purpose. And that shared purpose is actually to heal the fractures between us. Now, when I remember I first talked about this, I had a couple people tell me, well, that's pretty high-minded. But it really is probably the only thing that's going to satisfy us, is to realize that is what we're about, that really is our task, that's no matter what else we do during the day, that this is the overarching thing, and that part of that purpose is that the Course in Miracles says it in a way that raises the hackles in some people, but that each and every one of us is a part of this movement that brings salvation to the world. And I know that salvation is a very charged, highly charged word, and people think about it. People have different ideas about it, but it just really means safe and sound. And so part of our task is to extend this safety to others, because as in the meditation this morning, we give that which we want to receive. We teach that which we need to learn. So we bring safety. Part of our identifying ourselves with Spirit, is that we become a blessing to the world. And I want to just talk about that for a second, because all these things, if you just look at that and say, well, that's nice, you want to be altruistic, and yeah, of course, everybody pays lip service that idea that, you do good in the world. But the fact is, according to this, and I believe it made so much sense as I was doing it earlier this morning and then in the meditation here, where it says, thus do I obey the law of love and give what I would find and make my own. So years ago, I remember going to a class where the woman who was running the class, she said, I just want you to know that if you really think that you're lacking something in your life, whatever it is that you think you are lacking, you need to give more of that to life, and then you will have more of it. And see, now, like, this is counterintuitive, right? Because you're saying, well, wait a minute, I don't have enough of it. How could I give it when I don't have enough of it? And she was so firm about it. She said, well, first of all, let's just talk about non-material things. If you feel lonely, if you feel like you're not, if you feel like you don't have enough love in your life, just give more love, and you will have more. So now this, then people are, I see people nodding their heads and they're going, oh yeah. And this, that makes kind of sense, because nobody's telling you to get in your pocketbook. So any of those emotional things that you think you need more of, just give more of that. Just have an intention and begin a habit of giving more of that. Even that is very threatening a lot of times to think about doing that. But then she went further and she said, and if you think you don't have enough money, you need to give more money away. And that's why everybody wanted to get up and leave. Right? Because how can you do that? I don't have enough now. How can I possibly go give more away? But her point was that this is just the way her view. Listen, it's just a theory. I can't prove it. I can tell you from my experience that it works for me. And all I can say is you do it and see what happens. But her whole viewpoint was whatever it is that you think you don't have enough of, the problem is that you're stuck in a mindset of lack. That's the problem. You may think there's all kinds of other problems that are contributing to it, but the real problem is your mind is telling you that there's not enough. And you fill in the blank that there's not enough what? There's not enough of this and there's not enough of that. Whatever it is, her point was, just try it. Just go out and try it. Give more of it and see what happens. See what comes back to you. So the meditation is saying that all these gifts are already ours. Now, of course, we need to remember that what the meditation is talking about is really, it's not concerning itself with the material world. It is really talking about those gifts of spirit, is really what it's talking about. But what we know about the material world is that it is a reflection of what's going on with us on the inside. So then if we turn our minds around to realize that everything that we give, that's what we are receiving, then what that will play out in the material world is if we start giving from our hearts, then we will start receiving. It just will naturally happen in all areas and in all ways. Nothing, but hey, just put your toe in the water. Just try it a little bit. Try it with one thing or another thing. You don't even have to go whole hog if you don't want to. Just try a little bit and just see what happens. Just see how, the result. So our identity in the world has to do with how we were created. So over and over we hear that we're created in the image of God. And here's the image of God. What is God? Three descriptions in the Bible of what God is. That God is spirit, that God is light, and that God is love. These are the three things. It says God is these things. So then, we, made in the image and likeness of God, we are spirit. We are light. We are love. And we are to then act like God acts. We are like God in that way. We need to remember the relationship, though. We are not the creator. We are the created. That's the thing that's part of humility, is to understand, to get that in order, right? But made in image and likeness means, okay, so this is my identity. This is who I really am. And what I'm supposed to do is the exact same thing as the Creator did, is to extend those things. So what do? I extend of my spirit. And you think about that. Think about extending of your spirit is extending the essence of yourself out into the world. To think about yourself as being light, to say, I can actually visualize. See, I work like with the visualizations. It works best for me when I actually see the picture in my mind. I want to see the light, and my body becomes a symbol of this, and the parts of my body become a symbol. I want to see the light in my heart extend to you. I want to visualize. I want to see it coming out into the world. And of course, and that's really matches up to that third component, which is love, which I find I am love. And how, again, in the symbols that we use to communicate in words, my working definition is that love is the ability to feel connected to others and the desire for only good to come to them. So then my identity of love is that I want to extend that feeling of connection and that desire for only good. I want to see and feel myself doing that. And what the meditation is saying is, when I do it, when I give it, I receive it. And we get caught up in this idea of that horizontal timeline. But actually, what happens is it's instantaneous. It's like they both happen at the same time. Because remember, the first thing is you really can't give anything if you don't have it. So you have to have received it in order to be able to give it. So, but it happens so quickly together that it's like instantaneous and it's synchronous, right? It happens together. So tomorrow lesson, the lesson for tomorrow finishes up a section, and then the next section actually is titled, "What Am I?" And it starts off as like this, like I'm praying in an affirmative way when I look at this. It's italicized in the text, so it's meant to be a prayer. It says, "I am God's son, complete and healed and whole, shining in the reflection of his love." Now this can be very objectionable, this idea right off the bat. Wait a minute, Jesus is the only son. No, together, all of us together. It's not saying, it's not putting any one particular one of us in some ascendant position. It is saying that together, healed and whole, we are God's son. In me is his creation sanctified and guaranteed eternal. In me is love perfected, fear impossible, joy established without opposite. I am the holy home of God himself. I am the heaven where his love resides. I am his holy sinlessness itself. For in my purity abides his own. Now, this is a lofty vision, and it's certainly not talking about our identification